Well, Chris Doghudje is an Yoruba man. That's it. First and foremost, he was born some 81 years ago in a small village called Usiafron, which is about 11 miles from Ughelli and about 8 miles from Warri. That's he attended his primary school first in his village as infant up to standard 2. Then from 3 to 6, he was in Warri Catholic School. After that, he attended secondary school in Warri. The college was called United College of Commerce at that time. Sometimes now it has changed to United College. Did his 5 years there, after which he became a teacher in a modern school and a secondary grammar school. The modern school was called St. Paul's, that was Odion Warri. Then the secondary school was St. Peter Claver's College at Agalokwe near Saple. After that, he went to the university, and there he studied mass communication. He went to the University of Nigeria to study, then called journalism, which was later changed to mass communication. Graduated not from the University of Nigeria, unfortunately. He graduated from the University of Lagos because of the civil war that forced him out, along with others. Forced those who are not Igbos out of the University of Nigeria. So graduated from the University of Lagos in 1967. That much is my background. The village was essentially a rural village, and growing up required me to maybe be a little apprentice to my uncles, going to tap rubber in the morning. Then in the afternoon we go to this primary school. In the evening we go to catechism classes. That was mainly what it was in the village. There was no traffic jam. There was no problem with, of course, no electricity then. And so it was very rural and very cool. Then Warri was not that rural. It's not rural. Warri is an urban center. So electricity came in, but I did virtually the same thing of waking up in the morning, going to school, after which you come back to help with housekeeping, and then catechism. Catechism was left out of the Warri on a regular basis, but because I was staying with a teacher who was in a Catholic school, Sunday Mass was important. You must go to Mass. Then in the evening, you must go to benediction, and enjoying yourself was not there, out. You don't talk of enjoyment. You don't talk of, at 14 or 15, you don't talk of having a girlfriend at all. You only concentrated on your studies plus going to catechism class, not catechism, the Mass on Sunday morning, and then in the evening, you went to benediction. As a small boy, occasional rascality came in, especially in Warri. So sometimes I can dodge the benediction and go to Warri Township Stadium to pick tennis, to help pick tennis. People were playing for a small fee. At that time it was, if you helped them to pick tennis for about an hour, you got only 3 pence. It was called 3 pence, toro. They paid you, and you use that to eat during lunch. Guguru, you eat guguru and ekba. Here we call it, but Warri we just call it guguru, granite and guguru. And that was it. Really, it was fun. I can tell you, it was fun, but cool as well.
Good.
I don't know how to put it, but all I know is that I knew I was brought up a strict Roman Catholic. And to that extent, you had to keep the 10 Commandments. You were warned about the 10 Commandments every day. Of course, the Gospels tell you that. Your own teacher tells you that. You still, had to be respectful, which is very good, And I call it something very good because you are told to be obedient to your parents in all that is not sin, parents and elders in all that is not sin. And I kept to that, and I still like people to keep to that, being respectful to parents in all that is not sin. And what else? Well, serious life of studying to pass exams, not stealing marks, not copying from other people to pass an exam. I just had to be a good boy, because if you misbehaved and you were caught, definitely my own master, the one I was staying with, that is my sister's husband, my senior sister's husband, will give you 6 strokes of the cane. He had a cane in the house. So if any small misbehavior was rewarded with bastinado, you were given 6 lashes. And he didn't spare the rod at all. All right, so that was it. Worry, yes. You cannot help seeing rascality in the town because it is Warri, it's a cosmopolitan town. But then you should not participate. See, but don't participate. I came to Lagos 1962 after teaching for 2 years at St. Peter Clavers and Agalope. When I came to Lagos, it was not that I wanted to come to Lagos, but I had resigned from St. Peter Clavers because I had gained admission to Furabe College, Sierra Leone. I had even obtained my travel with something, what do you call it, passport, but it was West African travel something, which I got, and I thought I could travel to Sierra Leone to do a degree in economics, BA economics it was, not BSc. So well, in those days you fill the form and you contacted anywhere you wanted to go, and if you had A-level, and I had my A-level papers, and then they decided to admit you or not admit you. There was no jam at the time. So I decided to go to Sierra Leone. I had resigned, and then I went to Warri to see whether I could get some sponsorship from because I had not saved enough. So I went to Warri to whether my master, the man I stayed with before, could give me money. Unfortunately, he had no money. Then a friend of his who liked my scholarship, I like to call it scholarship, of my scholarly behavior, gave him some money to keep, which the man said I could take. Again, I got there to discover that money had evaporated. And hey, what do? I had resigned already from St. Peter Clavers. And so I couldn't go back. So I said, okay, let me come to Lagos to see whether I can get a place to work and save some money to go to Nsukka. So that brought me to Lagos 1962, and I stayed here till 1964, and I worked briefly as an ordinary clerk at the then ECN, Electricity Corporation of Nigeria, Tijora. 3 months later, I left to go and start teaching at one small college in Abule Ijesha, Yaba, called Yaba Academy. So for the next 2 years, Chris Doghudje, as I like to be called, right? Chris Doghudje was a teacher again after Agalope. And so I came not by choice as such, but just because of the disappointment I had with going to Sierra Leone after I had got travel certificate and all of whatnot. So our travel papers and all whatnot. So that is it. So I became a teacher again, teaching in St. Paul's Catholic Modern School in Odion, Warri, then teaching in St. Peter Clavers, then teaching in Yaba Academy, altogether about 6 years before I went to the university. Right, nothing much to say other than that I had my A-level papers and I wanted to do a course that was not just BA, but just not a course without a particular career in mind. So I applied to the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Incidentally, I also applied to the University of Ibadan. Ibadan said I should do a diploma, or I could do a diploma in dramatic arts. Then Nsukka admitted me, because you could apply to as many universities as you liked. So Nsukka admitted me for journalism, and I thought that was a profession, and then dramatic arts was not then a profession to me. And then there was no Nollywood and other places you can think of when you do theater arts or something. So I decided to choose journalism. I admired those who were called journalists, and that's what took me to Nsukka. But when I got 2 admissions, my name was published in the list of those admitted to Nsukka, published again in the list of those for University of Ibadan. I consulted with people, and I was advised, take to journalism. Well, let's take it. Journalism was a very pleasant experience as a student in Nsukka. You did all the 101s, English 101, general science 102, and so on and so on. And first 2 years, which of course I did only 2 years there, I was definitely a brilliant student. So much so that gave me scholarship for the final year. So, but back to some people I was with. Among my star classmates, among them was and is still a man well known in the Nigerian society, Mr. Tony Momo. Now he answers Prince Tony Momo. I think he's in the ruling political party at the moment. So I won't push myself into politics. I don't like politics. But yes, he was there. Another person who was a famous person, but now dead, is from Abeokuta. What's his name? Why am I forgetting his name? He later became the editor of OPEC magazine in Austria, and he headed even the Daily Times as a general manager or so. All right, Oseni, yes, Tunji Oseni. All right, Tunji Oseni was a classmate. Tony Momo was also a classmate. The other one was editor of Observer in Benin, and that is Sam Epelle of blessed memory. Those are the 3 people I can just mention at the moment who were in the same class with me. And we had an illustrious teacher who was from the Midwest with us at that place called Mr. Uche. I think he attended Syracuse University in New York. He was our teacher, and he was notorious for asking us to write editorials when we graduate, editorials that will make people sit up, government to sit up, political parties to sit up, and that if you couldn't write such editorials, people to sit up, then you are not my boy. You must be his boy, right? If you could write editorials to make people sit up. Right here in the University of Lagos, coming to the University of Lagos again was not by design, but by accident. The Civil War was about to. The problem of Igbos being massacred in the north had taken place. And Ojukwu, who was then the military governor of eastern Nigeria, said sorry, he could not protect students or anybody who was not an Igbo in the east. So non-Igbos had to leave. We were given 1 or 2 weeks to pack and go. So that took all of us who were from other parts of Nigeria, back out of Nsukka. So we came home to me. I went back to my worry, but luckily, University of Lagos had a registrar who was from the then Midwest, Chief A.Y.A.K. So they contacted Chief A.Y.A.K., came to Benin, and at Benin, we were, those of us who had courses that Lagos University had or could, chose Lagos rather than going to any place where you didn't have either the course or something near to the course, so that you could continue. You have done 2 years at Nsukka, you just needed 1 year to graduate in those days with A-level. So that was it. That's what it was. Chief A.Y.A.K's interest in journalism, because he was not just an assistant registrar before, but he was also a information officer in the old Western Nigeria. So he liked journalism, and he wanted those of us who were doing journalism at Nsukka to move to Lagos, where he then helped to establish the Department of Journalism of Mass Communication in the University of Lagos. So that was what brought me to Lagos. Then it was fun, surprisingly. Why? Because we were in a hostel out of campus. And the hostel was where the University of Lagos started, and many people don't know today when they get to Lagos that the University of Lagos started at Baptist Academy. There is a building still there now, where Baptist Academy, not far from the same campus, the same compound with the secondary school. That was where we were. We were housed there, about 30 of us, and a bus came in the morning to take us to Koka, and then brought us back in the evening. And so it was a jolly time. You can imagine 30 students journeying to and fro, right, to go to school. Instead of being on the campus, we couldn't get a place on the campus, so we were housed, accommodated at Baptist Academy. So we called our hostel the mobile hostel. Not much. The students were again the ones from Nsukka. Those are the ones I can remember. We were 6 that came to Lagos to have established the Department of Mass Comm. All right, I can remember, I may not remember all names immediately now, but Tony Mama was one, Tunji Oseni was another, one Enahulu was another, then one Solomon Agedo, another. That's 4 now. I think only any missing one, then myself. No, one is missing. We were 6. There was Oamen Enahulu, and there was Solomon Agedo. So we were there. We were the ones who came, and we all enjoyed this jolly ride from Baptist Academy to Akoka campus. We also enjoyed having the only air-conditioned classroom in the University of Lagos, because we were housed in a room in the library, and which was fully air-conditioned. The clerk to that particular class was also housed in that. So there was no Department of Mass Comm as you have today, and having a building of its own. No, we were right inside the library, which was fully air-conditioned. The teachers were essentially people experienced in mass communication, brought to help us finish. So you had Uche Chukwumerije for one, who was writing around the world in these 7 days for the Sunday Times. You had the famous Christopher Kolade, who was then with NTA. He came to help us finish. Christopher Kolade, Dr. Christopher Kolade now, but he was Mr. then. Then we had the head of Radio Nigeria, then called Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, Victor Badejo. All right, I think the first Nigerian to ever head Radio Nigeria. All right, we had even the chief, AYK, the registrar himself, was a lecturer to us. Then for political science, just to spice up knowledge of mass comm, there was one Dr. Emishwe. Those are the lecturers I can remember. I think we even had one from the Information Service of America. There was a man from the Lagos branch of Information Service from America who taught us, yes, what did he teach? He taught us PR, and this PR was also spiced by a top PR practitioner, the first president of the PR Association in Nigeria, Sam Epelle, who was of Federal Information Service. He was first of all a PR man, information officer to Nigerian Railway, then later Federal Information Service. Those were the lecturers. And the good thing about them was that they were practitioners. And they made you, enjoy the class and enjoy the lessons. Take it, we did journalism.
Okay.
Right. Having done journalism and having been exposed to some people from the PR sector and all that, incidentally, there was no person, the Association of Advertising Practitioners was not there then. Therefore, we took nobody from anyone. But we knew of the leading advertising agencies. And we knew that journalism was connected with advertising. And funny enough, the acting head of department for us was the registrar, Chief AYK. And so when we were to graduate, he wrote a letter to the Daily Times, he wrote a letter to NTA, then it was NTS. He wrote a letter to Radio Nigeria, and that was it. He wrote a letter to these people. I think he also wrote a letter to OBM. Then it was called S.H. Benson. He wrote a letter to them that, look, there are 6 young Nigerians who are about to graduate. Better think of them if you want professionalism in the profession of journalism. These people are trained. Until now, you didn't have such training, so please consider them. So he sent a letter to them. Unfortunately, fortunately, before we graduated, I was invited to OBM for an interview before the final exam. I attended the interview. A week later, I was invited again to attend another interview with Linters. So that was it. Now, NTA did not write me, but I think somehow, a Guavan was taken at NTA. Then somehow, Tony Momo, who was a sub-editor before he came to university with the Daily Times just said, come home, right, to Tony. A Guavan straight to NTA. Then Daily Sketch of Ibadan took Tunji Oseni. So that was how I got into it, not because I chose those 2 places. I could have gone to any one of them, and radio, TV, or newspaper, any one of them I could have gone to. But even journalism was really not not journalism. Advertising was not a first choice as well. I could just have entered anyone that a journalist could fit into. So that was it. Okay. That's what made me go into advertising through Linters. Okay. Employment application was approved for the 2. Incidentally, very funny story. The letter from OBM, then S.H. Benson, that letter came. A week after that of Linters came. The salary from Linters and the salary from OBM had a difference of £100. We're talking pounds then. Good. One was 850, even 200. One was 850, that was linters, and pounds per year, not per month.
What year was this?
We're talking about 1967. Good. 850 from linters, whilst OBM wanted a starting salary of 650. So I started with OBM on Monday, and on Friday I got the letter from linters, and on the following Monday I found myself going without resignation. I moved to linters. And of course that was where my real advertising career blossomed. That's where it started, where it blossomed, and where it also ended. It was okay. It was okay, but the workers, the only thing I can say is that the workers were not necessarily trained in advertising. They learned it on the job. And they hired people essentially from radio and from television to work for them. Ted Mukuru was the WMBS, WNT man. Then Banjo Sholari, a blessed memory as well, was also from WMBS, WNTV. Okay. Then a man like Femi Adeniyi Williams was from NTA, but then it was NTS or NTV. So that was it. Advertising was populated by people who were in journalism or who were, journalism via newspaper or radio or whatever. Incidentally, one top agency at the time, a photographer, a newspaper photographer, founded one of the earliest agencies in Nigeria. But Linters was the first. It was called West Africa Publicity. The UAC group funded it, and so that was it. The agencies at the time, in 1967, were less than 20, if I'm right, less than even 10. All right, only 10 agencies. But later, as I was there, at the time of the formation of Association of Advertising Practitioners in Nigeria at the time, I think they had gone to 23. They were really more than 23, but the first thing was to concentrate on indigenous agencies, and Linters was not considered indigenous. But we joined them a year or two later after that association was founded, and that was it. Okay. But it was an exciting career in the sense that you were involved with the promotion of goods and services from places, from two or three great companies at the time. One was Lever Brothers, not called Unilever then, it was called Lever Brothers, for Omo, Planta, Blue Band, Surf, even Drive. They had three detergents, Surf, Omo, and Drive. And then from Cadbury you had Bonvita, you had, what else? Bonvita, you had even Pronto, you had one very good one, Goody Penny Sweet that is good to eat. Then we used Millicent Small to launch Bonvita, Bonvita for energy, Bonvita for you. That was the lady that sang a song, in England that was very, very popular. We used her. She was the personality behind the launch of Bonvita. Then, of course, tobacco. NTC. NTC for gold leaf. NTC had even better than Hedges. Gold leaf was the Nigerian one. Then Benson and Hedges. And all that. So I can't remember whether Linters did the one for Nigerian Railway at the time, but I would guess that maybe Linters was the one that produced the great one for Nigerian Airways. Inviting people to travel by train, you had a little song, I can't remember the full song, but I can remember that you don't know Nigeria if you have never gone by train. travel west, travel north, all the way from north to south and north to the east. Railway is the best way to travel. That was beautiful then. Another one that I enjoyed very much, oyster milk. Then there was no rule that people should feed babies with mother's milk. So there was this oyster milk ad, which if it is now, we'll say, which went viral. Why? Because it was such a melodious song. Feed your baby the oyster milk way. Give him oyster milk every day. It begins with O and ends with K. Oyster milk, okay. I didn't make any movements, but I was forced to move. After 5 years in Linters, Ogilvy, who were handling part of Cadbury, Linters was a part and they part. They invited me to come over. They had met me at some joint meetings, and some white person was about to go back to England, and they thought the best Nigerian to join them was Chris Doghudje from Linters. So they invited me to lunch. The managing director himself was the one who interviewed me. I had not written a letter, but they just invited me to lunch, and I went to lunch. It was at the Ikoyi Hotel there. There was a Chinese restaurant in the Ikoyi Hotel, and that was where I had my first interview with OBM, Ogilvy Benson and Maida. And after the interview, he had to write to say, "We want you." So, cut a long story short, it ended with my going over there after 5 years with Linters. Then, 5 years later, Linters also had a little problem with somebody very experienced about to leave. And again, they came to me to invite me to come back to Linters. Linters did not require any further something, no letter, just invited me and just told me how much they would pay me if I came back. They promised me that the status I had already got in OBM would be retained or maintained. So what status was I? I was already a client service director, so I couldn't come to Linters to be something less. So incidentally, that coincided with Linters being 50 years in Nigeria, and then they invited me to come back, and I came back to Linters. And I stayed with Linters from then till I retired in 1992. Wow. So that is my history. 1988, I came back. 1982, went to where? Went to OBM. Then 88, came back to Linters. And I stayed until I became managing director until I retired. So there was that movement. Okay. But again, it was not by choice. People persuaded me to move. Yes and no. Ad News is after retirement. Okay. That's 1993, it's February. That's Ad News. But inside Linters, as client service director, before I even became a managing director, I was invited many, many times to give lectures in advertising by AAAN. I was even secretary to the committee for training in AAAN now. It was AAPN then. Now, the teaching to do advertising exams was not an Ad News matter. Before that, before I actually left Linters, I had been teaching people via seminars and workshops. All right? At a certain time, people in the advertising industry, some of my colleagues were asking, is AAPN paying you? Why is it you have the star at every seminar and all that and all that. So that's what it is. On the training, when I then left Linters as managing director, when I retired, apart from establishing AdNews, I also decided to run a training course for people. That was just before. I had a training course for people preparing for business education exam council exams in advertising, marketing, and public relations. So I was teaching people, and quite a number of university lecturers who knew about my career before, a career in the university and career later. Those people used to send people to me for for some courses and all that and all that.
Okay, I think that
yes, the teaching in me was definitely continued. Okay. That was why I was in the training committee of AAAN, Training and Education Committee. That's what we called it. Okay, the teaching in Agalokwe, teaching in St. Peter Clovers, all contributed to my being a teacher that did not train as a teacher. No, I retired from Linters, okay, and therefore also retired from AAA and then AAPN. But APCON was what? APCON is Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria. And we, in advertising, asked for it. We midwifed it, though it is established by the federal government. But we were the midwives because we asked for it. We met the then people, president, whatever. I think APCON came under Babangida. We visited Babangida to ask for it. Luckily, the Minister of Information at that time was a classmate.
What year was this, please?
Well, I think the better way to put it is 90. There was this Topo Badagry something of 1974. But this thing, all those things preceded forming of APCON about 1978 or 1988. 1988, yes. 1984, 86 was Topo Badagry Mass Communication Policy Conference under Tony Momo. Then what happened? After that, the idea of having APCON came, and the AAPN was the chief sponsor of that idea, appealing to government to have it. First of all, asked for an institute of advertising, but they turned it to Council of Advertising Practitioners. That is to regulate the industry, to make it even a profession, to sanitize and to regulate. And they made it a profession to have a professional certificate or diploma. You can get it from being, so to control the advertising profession in all its aspects and ramifications. That's APCON. Then before I became chairman, we had three others. We have had Mr. Moemeke, then chairman, managing director of Linters. We've had Olufalomo, Chief Olufalomo, who came into advertising through Linters, but retired when I was coming from OBM and formed his own agency. Then after that, of blessed memory, Meun Zerbe of, I think, Sunrise, his agency, headed APCON. So I was the fourth chairman of APCON. Again, it's not by design. If you have been appointed, maybe secretly people in the industry will recommend you, but the ministry had to pick the person to be. That's how I became chairman. And of course, part of the job of APCON is to control the practice, and part of the job of APCON is also to train people in advertising. Therefore, the training part of Chris Doghudje was there again. I was not only chairman of APCON, but we had a training committee, and I was a member throughout the time I was in APCON. Right, well, because there was no profession before called advertising. It was not like law, and it didn't just start from a university course and so on, or it didn't affect human beings like law and medicine affect human beings. So because it's not that kind, we found it a little difficult but not impossible, because we made provision that people who were already in it before APCON was formed, those people can become members, automatic members. Are you getting me? People who were in the functional part of advertising, not accountants, but those in copy, those in media, those in client service, who had spent 3 to 5 years there before, woo, straight away you become a member. So getting those recruits was not a problem. You only had to pay the fee and you became a member. Good. It is after that group had been wiped out that it became people who qualified in advertising. And then, of course, people were doing advertising via mass comm. Some were doing advertising through marketing departments, if universities. So strictly speaking, it is not. The only thing is that it is still possible for a man to be a good copywriter without necessarily doing advertising. He could be a journalist and come in to be a good copywriter, because journalists write, so they can write to persuade. Rather than writing to inform, you write to persuade. That's the only difference. So that's it. So we could take a man who did English, train him in the agency for 4 or 5 years, and again allow him to become a member. Otherwise, if he doesn't do it that way, as he joins advertising, he's encouraged to do the APCON exam. And if he could get the APCON exam, fine. If he could get anything from the Institute of Marketing in England, yes, fine. And that's it. It's just that AAAN itself didn't start an exam, all right? Again, life is such a thing that you don't plan everything. If it was possible to plan everything, no problem. But again, I was sitting on my own in Zeus Bureau in Surulere, number 12, Ilori Street, when I got invitation from the school. Then it was not even called Pan-Atlantic, it was Pan-African, the School of Media and Communication, SMC. I got the dean himself, the dean of the faculty of SMC, came to my office to say, sorry, we heard so much about you in advertising. We know you are retired, but we think you are not tired. So can you come to help teach the master's program, advertising planning and analysis of media? So I said, oh. I first of all rejected it. I said, sorry, I'm old now. I don't think I can come and be a teacher again, and I have not been a teacher, and I'm not a master's man. He said, no, the experience you have is enough, all right, for you to come. I said, okay, I'll think about it. But he didn't want me to think about it for too long. He sent somebody who was a registrar to APCON before, called Dr. Bell Moloku, who was registered at APCON. At the time I was in APCON, not necessarily the managing director, not necessarily the chairman. Who was already, after retiring from APCON, he was teaching there. So he had to send that man to come and persuade me to come over. And he persuaded me to go over there. And I think I did about 5 to 6 years with them. As they don't call him, they don't call you an ad hoc teacher. They call you what?
An adjunct.
Adjunct facilitator.
Yeah.
So they made me an adjunct facilitator, and I did that for 5 to 6 years with the School of Media and Communication. Incidentally, Ted was also my teacher in secondary school in the United College, Warri. But he came, I think, for an exam, a degree exam in Ibadan. Ibadan was the center in the West. And after the degree exam, he was interviewed by WNBS of VNTV, and he came to Warri merely to pack his things and go to Ibadan. That's how he came. So, if you are talking of the root of Pidgin English in the country, I don't know whether if there's any other town you can mention before Warri. So he came with this knowledge of Pidgin English. And then he joined Lintas as radio TV producer, not as a copywriter. He became a copywriter much later. Good. As a radio TV producer, you were acquainted with copy. And the copy, first and foremost, has to be in English. Script, whether about radio or TV, was in English. But there was always need in the Nigerian environment for a Pidgin equivalent. We call it Pidgin translation, Igbo translation, Yoruba translation, and Hausa translation. Those three were very... Is it 3 or 4? 4.
4.
Good. And for a man who was brought up in Warri, definitely he became a master in translating things to Pidgin English. And he didn't even call it translation, he called it more of recreating it in Pidgin English. And that was what led to his coming up with some beautiful things, beautiful commercials like the one for Vono, Weke Kule. That's the name because he used the onomatopoeia, which you can only get from Pidgin English. He used to talk of the taste of blue band margarine being taste like bangba. Definitely, there's no English equivalent for that.
Wow.
Or black tingudo for Guinness. Black tingudo, that the big one I like. You know, that was it. It's just many things accidental. Nigeria at that time, now you don't have to be with radio before you come in, and now you only have to do Pidgin without being from Warri. So the Pidgin of today is not as sweet. The commercial Pidgin of today is not as sweet.
I was going to talk about that.
Because the Warri connection is now missing. We now have Lagos-Warri connection. Those are the two things mixed together that has the Pidgin, that produces the Pidgin commercials that you now hear. But with Ted Mukuru, it was the origin of Pidgin. He even wrote an article on Pidgin, the origin and the significance. Pidgin English and significance, the origin, to the extent of tracing it back to Sierra Leone, you know, and all that and all that. So that was it. Accidentally, he came from Warri, and he came into advertising, and he was forced to be translating things in Pidgin. People family life just says, very simply, that I grew up to want to marry, and so I married.
Yes.
Right, at the age of 34, I married. That was 1973. I'm happy to say I have 4 kids who are now adults in their own right, who are now graduates and master's graduates. I have at least 2 who have masters, one who is a chartered accountant living in England. And that's it. I now have grandchildren, so it's not just having children. I think I have 5.
Wow.
So that's it. I married and I have children. Okay, that is. No, I don't think there is any as such. I don't regret being an advertising man. I don't regret becoming a managing director. But if it is money, maybe advertising did not give me money, all right, because I was more or less an employee, not quite an employer. In Linters, I was an employee till I left. Was a minority shareholder, so I wasn't in a place to make money. But when you look at the fact that some advertising practitioners of today becoming managing directors and chairmen of their companies are millionaires, maybe I should regret not being a millionaire. But maybe I should also not regret being a millionaire, because the wealthier you are, the more headaches you get in life. So people say. And of course, if it is going to heaven, they are told that the rich man going to heaven is very difficult. It's like an elephant or passing the eye of a needle. So I don't want to think of any regret. Okay. I only want to think that I have not ended in jail. My name is not in the newspaper for any fraud. And I'm happy. Well, coping is luckily I'm a retired man and I'm in the house more than I hardly go out. Okay, maybe the only area where COVID is giving me a little headache is with shaving my hair. Because otherwise I don't go out. It's just my boy that goes out. Other people go to market, so I don't. But what I find very difficult to understand is how there can be a disease that can shut a whole world down. No flights for some, no going to school, no concert, no enjoyment. You can't go to pubs to drink, and making life so difficult. It's so difficult to understand. Sometimes